Order. Order. Jonathan Gullis to move the motion.
Thank you, Ms Vaz. It's a pleasure, first of all, to serve with you in the chair, and I beg to move that this House has considered bus services in England. Ms Vaz, connecting communities with better public transport has been one of my top priorities since being elected in December 2019 by the fine people of Stoke-on-Trent North, Kidsgrove and Tork. Whilst I am delighted to have secured funding with my honourable friends, the members for Stoke-on-Trent South and Stoke-on-Trent Central, for the return of the Stoke to Leek line, millions more to fix the potholes that drive us potty in the potteries, and making upgrades to Stoke-on-Trent Railway Station and Station Road, like other members from across the House, buses remain the most important and valued form of public transport. Stoke-on-Trent has a road network that still harks back to the Victorian era, in a city made up of 6 towns in an unconventional layout, and where more residents than the national average don't own or have access to their own motor vehicle, whilst other major cities benefit from underground networks and in some cases trams too. Our city really does solely rely on its good quality bus network. Buses are vital in connecting our communities across Stoke-on-Trent North, Kidsgrove and Tork, enabling people the opportunity to shop, eat and drink, see loved ones, get to school or college, attend their local GP appointment, or enjoy one of the many great tourist attractions our city has to offer, such as the Spitfire Gallery in the Potteries Museum and Art Gallery. However, despite the still large amount of people who require or would like to use the bus, we've seen across Britain the local bus network has shrunk by an estimated 14% between 2016-17 and 21-22. Reports from the BBC back in early 2023 say that across England around 13% of bus services are supported by councils, placing ever heavier pressures on local authority budgets, which are more stretched than ever since the impact of COVID and the cost of living pressures, resulting in a large part from the post-COVID global recovery and Putin's illegal and immoral war in Ukraine, which spiked energy costs and fuelled inflation. In relation to the global COVID-19 pandemic, bus demand plummeted and is still recovering, but with some reports showing passenger numbers across Britain, excluding London, remain about 20% below pre-pandemic levels. In Stoke-on-Trent, we felt this more than most other areas. Across the city, bus services shrank by an estimated 50% between 2013-14 and 2021-22. However, it is important to caveat this by saying this is, to a large extent, the reductions have not come from the closure of entire routes, but repeated timetable changes, which, with a sleight of hand, was either reducing how frequently a bus arrives or how late into the evening it runs. In the summer of 2022, I hosted 2 well-attended meetings in Chelheath and Smallthorne, where local residents and I held Potteries First and D&G to account. We were determined to ensure that the operators stopped slashing routes, which was making it harder for local people to get around, and residents told me that there needed to be better and more straightforward routes to places like Leek, which required changing buses, and a direct link to Woolstanton Business Park to do their shopping. Earlier, elderly passengers were telling me that the lack of routes were making them isolated. Parents were telling me that their children couldn't get to their college or apprenticeship easily. Businesses told me that it made it a challenge when it came to recruitment and retention. And with many employers still working on shift patterns that don't work within existing timetables, and shops on our high streets felt the poor quality of service meant people were shopping outside of Stoke-on-Trent. This argument is reinforced by a survey I conducted of over 1,000 local residents across Stoke-on-Trent North, Kidsgrove and Tork, where 76% of residents responded that they would use the bus to go shopping, and 57% said that they would undertake more leisure activities if there were better bus services available. In addition, 64% of respondents also said to me that bus services could be improved with better routes to get them to different parts of the city in order to get out and about. And residents also expressed their desire for better services in the evening, with 49.6% of respondents saying that bus services could be improved if they ran later. This is especially the case for women and girls who might have been concerned about getting home safely. But whilst I've outlined the challenges we face, not just nationally but in Stoke-on-Trent, it would be unfair to not mention the unprecedented amount of support and subsidy that the bus operators have received since I was elected in 2019, particularly during the pandemic when passenger numbers plummeted because people were staying at home to protect loved ones. The government has announced more than £4.5 billion of funding for buses in England outside of London since 2020. During the global COVID pandemic, over £2 billion of taxpayers' hard-earned money was used in emergency and recovery funding to mitigate the impacts of the pandemic on the bus sector between March 2020 and June 2023. The Department for Transport makes available up to £259 million every year for bus operators and local authorities to help operators keep fares down and run services that might otherwise be unprofitable and could lead to cancellation. And without this support, we would have simply seen services cease entirely and bus operators go out of business. So I do want to pass on my thanks to the government for intervening, as well as the many bus drivers who kept going into work, particularly in the early stage of the pandemic, when we had no vaccine, and by simply turning up to work, they were literally putting themselves in harm's way. Alongside the COVID recovery grant, however, and working with councillors Abby Brown and Daniel Jellyman, as well as my honourable friend for Stoke-on-Trent South, we successfully campaigned and received over £31 million for Stoke-on-Trent to improve our bus services through the Bus Service Improvement Plan, enabling us to start busing back better. We bid for new bus routes across the city based on concerns we heard out and about across Stoke-on-Trent from residents and businesses. Our goal was to help thousands more people get around the city whilst reducing congestion on our road network. We also campaigned for better bus stops and shelters across the city. For example, I was recently on Shell Heath Road, where we can see investment to improve boarding curves, which will particularly be helpful for elderly and disabled residents. Moreover, we want to improve the quality of the bus shelters to encourage people onto the bus in bad weather, alongside electronic boards to ensure people can keep a track with the new and improved services. In terms of improving existing routes, in Stoke-on-Trent North, Kidsgrove and Torque, we have the extension of the 8 and the 36/36A service. The improved 36/36A service means we have bus routes that start earlier and finishes much later, better connecting the three towns in Stoke-on-Trent North, those being Kidsgrove, Tunstall and Burslem. This means people can enjoy a day out to visit Stoke-on-Trent and Staffordshire's award-winning indoor market in Tunstall, enjoy a pint or two at the Bull's Head in Burslem, and match day at Vale Park to see the mighty Port Vale, and visit the mother town of Stoke-on-Trent in Burslem, enjoying the historic Middleport pottery, as well as a tour around Titanic Brewery. The number 8 means that the people of Ball Green, Norton and Smallthorne will benefit from a weekend service, enabling them to get to and from the city centre, which needs to see increased footfall, but also enable elderly relatives to much more easily see their family and friends. For too long, communities, particularly in wards like Badley, Milton and Norton, have felt disconnected from the city and all it has to offer. And councillors Dave Evans and Carl Edwards have lobbied relentlessly with me to ensure we improve connectivity. There is still more to be done in terms of where bus stops are located in the ward, but this is a good first step to better connecting communities. But it is not just Stoke-on-Trent that is reaping the benefits. Bus funding for Staffordshire County Council has been used to introduce, for the first time in years, a bus service which connects Malcop and Harriseyhead with the rest of Newchapel, Kidsgrove, Whitehill, Torque and Butt Lane. The brand new 95 route enables residents to get down to Cloughall Park or Kidsgrove Sports Centre to help them keep fit and active, as well as enjoy a coffee or some shopping at the Affinity Shopping Centre. This route, run by D&G, has been so warmly received by local residents from the conversations I've been having on doorsteps with them, and been a passenger myself by hopping on at one of my nearer bus stops of this journey, the Butt Lane Co-op on Cedar Avenue, meaning my family and I can enjoy a day out to see things like the Drodrell Bank from Malcop Castle. This landmark investment is also about creating fairer fares for passengers. We've been able to cut bus fares by a third with a new £3.50 a day flat fare, which has helped massively in driving up footfall and consumer confidence in our local bus service. On a recent visit to Pottery's first depot in Stoke-on-Trent, I spoke with staff about the impact of the £31.7 million investment from the government into Stoke-on-Trent's bus services. Staff told me that there has been an improvement since the funding came in, which is backed up by research from Transport Focus, which has revealed that Stoke-on-Trent is now ranked 4th for most satisfied bus users and is ranked 2nd for value for money. Believe me, Ms Vaz, these are figures I didn't think I would see when I first got elected. And I was also told on the positive impact of the £3.50 a day flat fare cap and the £2 single fare on single journeys, which supports over 5,000 routes across England, including those in Stoke-on-Trent, Kidsgrove and Torque. Transport Focus's research has revealed that 11% of respondents are using the bus more, thanks to the capped fare, with 80% agreeing that the £2 ticket have helped with the cost of living. This is further supported by the Department for Transport statistics that show, following the introduction of the cap, bus fares in England outside of London have dropped by 6.2% between December 2022 and December 2023, and dropped by over 11% in rural and non-metropolitan areas. Whereas in Scotland, Wales and London, where buses are devolved, fares increased by 9.8%, 8.1% and 6.0% respectively. Along with the landmark 31 million to bus back better, communities across England, like Stoke-on-Trent and Staffordshire, are benefiting from the Prime Minister's bold new vision for the Midlands and North through a huge uplift of funding from the cancellation of the northern leg of HS2. The reallocation of £36 billion from HS2 will mean Stoke-on-Trent and Staffordshire will cumulatively benefit from over £200 million in additional funding for our roads and pavements, while Stoke-on-Trent will receive £19 million per year over the next 7 years for transport from the local government transport fund. This unprecedented investment will help us compete with London and the South East, who typically have better roads and transport links, in part because they generate more revenue from council tax and parking fees in comparison to northern towns and cities like Stoke-on-Trent. I'm currently campaigning to support elderly and disabled residents use their concessionary bus pass before 9:30 a.m. Research from the House of Commons Library shows that in 2020, across the country, almost a quarter of older persons and just over a third of disabled passers were allowed to use their bus pass on buses before 9:30 by local authorities. Not every concessionary bus pass user will need to travel early every day. However, it gives vulnerable people the security that when they do, they will not be charged. We cannot put a price on giving those who need support the confidence to travel around Stoke-on-Trent and the surrounding area. And at Prime Minister's questions on the 29th of November 2023, I was delighted that the Prime Minister supported my campaign, saying that, and I quote, he wholeheartedly backed the campaign to scrap the cap. However, the Labour-led Stoke-on-Trent City Council have failed so far to back my campaign, and in misleading comments from Cabinet Member Councillor Chris Robinson, given to the BBC, he said that Stoke-on-Trent City Council was not responsible for setting the timings for concessionary rate fares. I have therefore written to Councillor Robinson to make clear that the Department for Transport guidance states that free travel is at the discretion of local authorities, with the guidance stating that, and I quote, the national bus concession in England is available to any time on a Saturday, Sunday or bank holiday, and from 9:30 a.m. to 11 p.m. on any other day. Terms and conditions are able to, TCAs are able to offer concessionary travel outside these hours on a discretionary basis. So despite having written over 100 days ago, I'm yet to hear back from any of the Labour councillors in the Cabinet or Stoke-on-Trent City Council. But with the backing of over 1,600 local people via my Scrap the Cap petition, I'm determined to keep going and ensure that no excuse is used, particularly now there has been such a substantial increase in Stoke-on-Trent City Council's transport budget. I have had lots of residents write to me to say that why they back the campaign, including Pamela from Tunstall, who says, many pensioners can't afford to own a car and need buses to get to appointments. The older we become, the more important it is to have access to the bus. Roland from Talk Pit says, what is the point in having a free bus travel pass when it restricts people at a time when it is most needed, not only for convenience, but to save money, which in most cases these people can ill afford to lose? And Roderick from Milton also said to me, being able to use the buses from 9:30 would mean that it would, before 9:30, would mean that it would be a lot easier to make connections to other buses and to be able to get to Stoke Station to catch the earlier trains. Therefore, it is vital that Stoke-on-Trent Labour listen and deliver for residents by backing my campaign, and I hope the Minister will use today to join myself and the Prime Minister in calling on Stoke-on-Trent City Council to scrap the cap. When visiting the First Potteries depot a few weeks ago, I spoke with Zoe Hans from First Buses about an exciting opportunity for a new electric bus fleet which could come to Stoke-on-Trent. First Buses are ready and willing to invest £37 million into a brand new electric bus fleet for our great city. But this ambition has to also be met with an around £11 million investment from Stoke-on-Trent City Council. These brand new buses would not only encourage travel because they would be more modern and exciting, but they would make a huge difference to improving air quality in Stoke-on-Trent. The current fleet that we have roaming around our city is old, so a more reliable modern fleet would reduce the number of costly repairs and keep buses on our roads and out of workshops. I'm therefore working with First Potteries and my honourable friend the member for Stoke-on-Trent South to make sure Stoke-on-Trent City Council play their part in facilitating this exciting plan and investing that £11 million to support a new sustainable bus fleet. First Buses have made it clear that if the Council can deliver the necessary investment and infrastructure, then these new buses could begin carrying passengers in early 2025. The Government is already showing its ambition by allocating over £460 million dedicated funding for zero-emission buses this Parliament, of which Staffordshire County Council has already been a recipient. But I have now written to Stoke-on-Trent City Council about these exciting plans, and I hope they will deliver for people in Stoke-on-Trent and make this sensible investment to enhance the city's bus network. In conclusion, Ms Vaz, as I laid out, good local bus services are so important for local communities. They help to drive people onto our high street, encourage growth and investment. They liberate the elderly and disabled, giving them more freedom to get out and about. They have health benefits through reducing congestion and improving air quality, and they can help people get to work or college, which they would otherwise have been unable to get to. In short, they are pivotal to achieving levelling up, and that matters hugely. If we really want to transform communities like Stoke-on-Trent, we have to ensure the infrastructure is there to empower and embolden people and businesses in our communities. In order to do that, there has to be a reliable public transport network to help people get around. Buses are the most popular form of transport and serve as great liberators for millions of people. It is vital we get them right.
Thank you. Just to remind members that there's a possibility of a vote coming during the course of this debate. So the question is that this House has considered bus services in England. Richard Ford.
Thank you, Ms Vaz. It's an honour to serve with you in the chair. And I'd like to pay tribute to the honourable member for Stoke-on-Trent for securing this debate, but also for sticking up for his constituents by talking about some of the reasons that they need bus transport. I just want to read from an email that I received in October 2022, shortly after I was first elected. It was a very, very pleasant read. It begins, I would like to invite you to brunch at Greendale Farm Cafe on Sunday morning. My treat. The only stipulation is that we both travel there on public transport. Well, I was obviously quite keen to take this up until I looked into this a little bit further and found that Donna from Seaton was entirely right when she predicted that I wouldn't be able to meet her at Greendale Farm Cafe that Sunday morning for her treat. She knew all too well that buses don't travel to Greendale Farm Cafe on a Sunday morning. And she knew that because her son had started using that route on the bus. Her son had shown the get up and go to get himself a part-time job over the summer. But then, unfortunately, the bus route was withdrawn by the network provider partway through the tourist season. And Donna goes on to say, the government has a responsibility to provide a public transport system which is fit for purpose, and it is failing. I'll return to Donna later at the end of my speech. Almost a quarter of bus routes have been cut in the last 10 years outside of London. And yet buses are the easiest form of public transport to flex. You can introduce them, improve them, and expand them very readily. But of course, that also means that they can be reduced and collapsed just as quickly. For many people living in cities and in urban areas, buses are something that you can depend upon. They're simply always there, and you can take them for granted. You probably don't pay too much attention if you live in an urban area to the buses, because you know if you miss one, there'll be another one along shortly. But for people I represent in rural Mid and East Devon, they are not only an essential part of daily life, they are something that are so infrequent that even a single delay or a no-show can have a huge impact on your journey. Most villages and towns that I represent are served by a bus company called Stagecoach. And while this might conjure in your mind the idea of an 18th century horse and perhaps a mail coach, gold and gilded and rapidly getting the post from rural Devon to London, that is just simply not the sort of image that bus users in Devon have today. In fact, actually, they're probably more mindful of the sort of potholes that the stagecoaches of the 1800s were having to negotiate. The bus routes in my constituency have been increasingly scaled back in recent years, and often it is with very little public consultation. Since I was elected in 2022, we've seen changes to the number 1 service between Cullompton and Exeter, the 55 between Tiverton and Exeter, the 9A, which connects Seaton and Exeter, and several other routes that plug people into our towns, or at least used to. As a regular bus user myself, I know it's not uncommon to sometimes have to wait up to half an hour after the allotted time for the bus to round the corner. And this wouldn't be such a big issue if it was a consistent bus that you could depend on, but it's not. I'll just give an example of about 18 months ago when I was waiting at a bus stop in Ufcombe to get myself to the railway station at Tiverton Parkway to come here. And I was waiting there with a young lad who told me that he was waiting to go into Exeter to sit his driving test theory. We waited 15 minutes late, 20 minutes late. He was getting really anxious, and you could see that he was getting quite jittery about missing his theory test. In the end, I gave up, and I called a taxi. I knew Colin round the corner was reliable and would get us there. I gave this young lad a lift, and he made it to his theory test on time. But it occurred to me that you cannot depend on the bus, and you should not have to depend on other bus users to call a taxi and get you to your onward connection on time. And again, because this is a rural area, it's not only the buses that are infrequent, but the trains too. And if you miss your connection, Ms. Faz, then what happens is you then find yourself possibly delayed by over an hour, maybe 2 hours. So as a result, young people who are trying to get to college, for example, are forced either to wait those long periods, or else they will depend on family, perhaps their parents, to run them into the city. And that is affecting people's working days. You know, we're having a material effect as people are having to leave their working from home jobs or perhaps take time out of their working day to run young people to college. Now, in summing up, I imagine that we might hear from the Minister about the benefits of the bus fare cap. And I admit that this has been a welcome measure for regular bus users. Capping fares doesn't mean very much if the bus doesn't arrive in the first place. And we've seen that in the southwest, certainly a couple of years ago, the West Country was right at the bottom of the league table for the whole of England when it comes to bus delays. Since then, the appointment of a new managing director, Peter Knight, has been very welcome. I've met him several times, and I will say that he certainly has improved the service from what it was even 2 years ago. And what he pointed out to me is that an area like Devon has a large population of older people. And older people have concessionary fares, or indeed may travel on free bus passes. And that has a material effect on the bus company trying to operate the contract in that area. And so when it comes to thinking about making a bus route profitable, that can be tremendously difficult in an area where there are lots of people using concessionary fares or indeed paying nothing for their service at all. And so this is where, to draw this to a conclusion, I come back to that original correspondence that I had from Donna. She had a very practical suggestion for me, and I'd be keen to have the Minister's take on this later. She writes, the country networks should be divided into routes and their associated profitability, and then these routes could be combined into baskets which group together both the profitable and the non-profitable routes. The government should determine a timetable, perhaps local authorities can do that. The provider must then deliver on that timetable, taking the good with the bad. Instead, I fear what we've seen, which is correspondence that I've had back from government. This is correspondence from a government minister, Baroness Veer of Norbiton, writing to me in October 2022, who suggested that since deregulation in 1985, these bus services are simply on a commercial footing, and so I should be writing perhaps not to the minister, but contacting the bus company about my concerns, as this would be the most appropriate action. Personally, listening to the concerns of the constituents who can't get themselves to work on time, I'm struck that this is not just something for private companies, but it also needs to be something of a concern for government too. Thank you.
Jack Brereton.
Thank you, Ms. Vaz. It's a pleasure to serve with you in the chair, and I congratulate my honourable friend and city colleague, member for Stoke-on-Trent North, for securing this important debate. Bus services are extremely important to everyone in the Potteries, but of course right across England, and notably for deprived and remote communities, but also for those that are completely wedded to their own car. Road congestion would be even worse for those people if bus services did not take some of that strain. We all have a stake in bus services being attractive and successful. Of course, that does not mean to say that bus services are always the optimal solution to road congestion, because often local rail or trams will be more efficient than buses in that regard. But it does mean that buses are a necessary part of the mix, and we need to ensure that they're attractive enough to tempt more people out of their cars. And I very much support my honourable friend's particular initiative around the current fare cap, which is causing severe issues for many of our constituents. And particularly, I visited Strathmore College in my constituency on Friday, which provides education to young people with special educational needs. And particularly, they were telling me about the challenges and the impact that this 9:30 a.m. start has on their young people being able to access education. And also I was talking there with the Principal, Kate Ward, about some of the travel training that they're providing to young people and the impact that obviously this 9:30 a.m. has on those. So I very much support my honourable friend's campaign to address this issue. The focus of my comments in this debate will be on non-metropolitan areas of England outside of London. This particularly means North Staffordshire, which includes but extends further than the Potteries bus network, which itself extends further than the city of Stoke-on-Trent. And if that sounds a bit complicated, I should also add that the city is also cut by 2 network rail management areas, which all adds up to public transport solutions being harder to come by in North Staffordshire than public transport problems. The decline of bus services in our area over many years now is partly because we lack seamless in public transport services at the same time as suffering some of the worst road congestion in Europe. We do need to increase demand for bus travel in order to keep services financially viable in the future. This gives me a welcome opportunity to plug my private member's bill to preserve and enhance high streets with mandatory improvement plans, which received its second reading in the other place last Friday, ably moved by my noble friend Lord Whitby, the former leader of Birmingham City Council. Excuse me. Optimal accessibility by bus to designated and improved high streets under my bill will surely be a part of any local authority's considerations in its high street reviews. This will be particularly important in the market hub towns identified by DEFRA that have high streets of importance to surrounding rural areas. This includes Cheadle and Stone in proximity to my own constituency. Many of the residents living in villages throughout parts of North Staffordshire like Forsbrook, Tean and Alton have raised with me the lack of effective bus services. Locally, I'm glad that the bus service improvement plan, on which we as MPs were active and contributing and consultees, for which we helped to secure government funding, is making it cheaper to travel by bus. £3.50 per day now, or £12 per week in the Potteries Smart area, which I think will be a massive bonus for attracting more people onto the bus network. The plan combines with work from the Transforming Cities Fund, which we also helped to secure, making it easier to catch and more desirable to travel by bus. But unfortunately, it has been painful for us as MPs to see how slowly our City Council has delivered on any of the funding which we work so hard to secure. The package needs to be delivered with greater urgency, and I do thank the Department for their patience, but I hope ministers will continue to press the City Council to get all the promised and funded schemes over the line without any further watering down of ambition by the current Labour Council leadership. Absolutely.
I hesitate to interrupt his speech because I'm aware that he is making a number of particular points, but I do take the point in relation to the Council, and I just wanted to make it very clear at this outset point that A, we will continue to press the Council to respond and actually produce the results that they clearly need to do so. And also, I echo and endorse the point made by my honourable friend Paul Stoke that in relation to the concessionary fares, that it is absolutely the case that the responsibility lies with the local authority.
Brereton.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for the work, I think right honourable actually, honourable friend for the work, well he should have been, for the work that he's been doing in the department to push on some of these issues, which has been a great assistance, and I know he will continue to do that and work hard for us in the department. And particularly on the TCF package, we were promised that if funding was won, the City Council would deliver a more efficient bus rail interchange at Stoke Station. And works are starting on this site this week, but we also need to see further action to reinstitute some of those cross-city bus routes that serve the places that rail can't reach without having to change and wait at our city centre in Hanley. It will be a betrayal if the City Council fails to deliver effectively the package promised. Our local buses now routinely take car payments, which is in line with 93% of buses that are enabled to do this across England. In fact, the worry now is no longer that buses won't take cards, it's that they won't take cash at some point in the future. We must nip such fears in the bud, and I would welcome any comments from the Minister on ensuring that the acceptability of cash payments on bus services will be well into the future. Under BSIP and TCF, it is also now far more usual for Stoke-on-Trent bus stops to be elevated above the standard curb height, so that wheelchairs, prams and so on are more easily able to access with wheeled on and off services. And those who find step up and step down from the bus more challenging no longer struggle so much. Except, of course, that is when the bus can't actually pull into the bus stop because someone has decided to park there, hurling abuse often at the bus driver that tries to move them on. Rarely, thankfully, do these things turn violent, but the range of antisocial behaviour, whether against drivers or against other passengers, which we see with public transport, does seem to be widening, which is why I particularly welcome that Stoke-on-Trent is one of the areas which is receiving government funding to pay for new transport safety officers as well, to help reduce ASB on buses and trains throughout our area. London continues to dominate the bus statistics, accounting for 52.2% of all passenger journeys in the year for March 2023. But it is, I think, encouraging to see that non-metropolitan England has seen the strongest recovery in passenger journeys over the last 2 years, up 133.4%. This beats metropolitan areas up 111.4% and London up 106.3%. And in terms of bus mileage over the last 2 years, non-metropolitan recovery is of plus 11.3%, compares very favourably with a 2.1% mileage increase in metropolitan England and London's decline of 1.3%. But, and I pause here deliberately because it is a big but, in terms of bus mileage, all three areas saw declines in the latter years of the 2-year period. And I'm afraid this does reflect what we're seeing on the ground, where some bus routes have been cut from being, say, half-hourly to hourly, or where rural stretches of bus routes are being cut altogether. However, this trend of decline that we've seen over many years may now be about to just reverse, because of the £31 million bus improvement funding that we have secured, and we are seeking new and expanded routes, particularly in evenings and weekends, across the Potteries. Areas like Lightwood, which have not had a service for many years, have just seen a route reinstated thanks to this funding with the extension of the 50 service. Additionally, more services in evening and weekends will help with people who are shift workers, who struggle often to get back home or struggle at weekends to get to their shifts. So we've seen a number of further services extended. The number 6 with earlier starts at weekends. Number 11 with evening services introduced. Number 23, Sunday services extended to Newstead. Number 26, an extra service every hour. And a new 36A service in evenings for Mere and Mere Park, which will make a massive difference to those areas. And as my honourable friend said, local operators are starting to see a much more positive outlook, with First also looking to restore services to communities like Sandford Hill and Saxonfields, which lost its services some years ago. And I very much also support my honourable friend's campaign to get the fleet renewed, because we do need to see that investment going into new buses to create those zero-emission and sustainable buses throughout North Staffordshire. And I would urge with him Stoke-on-Trent City Council to take seriously the proposals that are coming forward from First to invest in that new fleet, because not only will that upgrade the fleet, that will help to attract more people back onto our bus services and will help to address some of the serious air quality issues that we've seen in a number of parts of Stoke-on-Trent and North Staffordshire. It's not just about bus either, and local rail should also be taking a bigger share of public transport demand in North Staffordshire than it currently does. Sadly, in accordance with Beeching's proposals, Stoke-on-Trent lost the entire loop line that had served 4 of the 6 towns, leaving 3 with no town centre trains at all, while a 4th town, Fenton, in my constituency, lost both its stations on the Crewe Derby line and on the Stoke to Leek line. The suburbs of Trentham and Mere in my constituency also lost their stations. Relying on buses to absorb the traffic, as Beeching claimed they would, has proven to be a great mistake. So notably so that Mere, I am delighted to say, is set to have its station rebuilt under the Restoring Your Railway programme. And I continue to push for it to be delivered with every urgency and connected to local bus services as well. Importantly, Restoring Your Railways is a reversal of the Beeching mindset, not just the Beeching cuts. It has been accepted that bus services alone in Mere do not and cannot solve the pressing issues of transport deprivation and chronic road congestion. In Trentham, where the effect of the Beeching Act has been compounded by the decision of the last Labour government to close the nearby stations in Wedgwood and Barlston in a very Beeching mindset move, very marginally speeding up the West Coast main line through the Potteries Arc, but only for the benefit of people travelling between Manchester and London. Again, local buses have not filled the gap in the south of the city, and I'm pressing the West Midlands Rail Executive and Network Rail to forge ahead with their work towards restoring a station in the south of the city to replace at least one of the 3 that have been lost. In Fenton, the transport problem of road congestion and pollution is again one that cannot be solved by buses alone. So we need to see Fenton Manor Station restored on the Stoke to Leek line, which my honourable friend has also been a great champion of. It was closed to passenger traffic in 1956, but which is now advancing through the Restoring Your Railway fund and committed for delivery on the government's Network North command paper. It will, of course, be crucial that these rail infrastructure projects are connected to bus services and that we achieve multimodal public transport journeys that are seamless as possible. This should include a station at Bucknell that offers easy interchange with existing bus services along Warrington Road to places like Tean and along Divity Road to places like Park Hall as well. In 2022, on average, people in households without access to a car made over 6 times as many local bus trips as those with access to a car. That is to say, 131 trips per person compared to 20 trips per person, respectively. Local bus services account for over half of all public transport trips made by people in households without access to a car. Bus services will continue to be a lifeline, but more effectively so if we can marry them up seamlessly with growing local rail network. I note here that among people in households with access to a car, under half, 45% of all public transport trips are made by bus, which suggests that people with cars are more easily tempted out of them by trains than by bus. This mix needs to be right. And I conclude with a plea to local companies to add more bus services to the mix in North Staffordshire and don't involve having to change at Hanley. Restoration of a route from Trentham to Cheadle via Longton, Blythebridge, Tean and Forsbrook is a top priority. And in peak season, it could also run to Alton Towers. Thanks to this government, progress and momentum is definitely there with TCF, BSIP and RYR for North Staffordshire to enjoy a meaningful revolution, frankly, in public transport provision. We must keep the momentum going and make travelling by bus more attractive, more viable and more connected seamlessly with local rail. So I thank the Honourable Member for bringing forward this debate.
Well, Howell.
Thank you, Ms. Basin. It's a pleasure to see you in the chair. And of course, I'm going to thank the member for Stoke-on-Trent North for securing this incredibly important debate. From 2022 to 23, the number of bus miles travelled in County Durham dropped from 14.5 million miles to 11.8, a drop of 18%. The miles supported by the local authority have dropped from 2.6 million to just under 2 million, a drop of 25%. Durham had a decline from 33.8 journeys per head of population to 32.6. It's just complete decline that's going on. The county is amongst the worst for buses running on time. 77% of buses, that's all it did, ran on time in March 23. But, you know, they're just statistics, Ms. Vaz. You know, the real thing for all of our constituents is the detail that sits underneath that. So, I have a list of the bus changes, and the first one I read out is number 7, which has actually had increased its frequency from half-hourly to hourly. Brilliant. Now I'll do the rest to go the other way. The number 8A has been reduced to remove Sunday service. The number 12 has been withdrawn completely, stopping the curve. There. The number 22 and 22B has been down from half-hourly to half-hourly. The X21 from Darton to Peterlee has been, the hourly service has been scrapped. The X22 is going to change in terms of what it's doing. Just inconsistency as to where it is. The 112 Scarlet Band has been lost completely, as has the 113, connecting Fishburn, Sedgefield, Ferryhill and Bishop Midland. The Arriva 57 that connected Durham, Trimdon and the Hartlepool has been replaced with another alternative service that just jumps around and removes people's understandings. We have an X12 that goes past Fishburn, which our residents on a recent visit by the Minister were expressing a need to change the direction of, just a slight deviation. And I have to give credit to Arriva on this occasion, that they've actually got a consultation going on now to do exactly that and change it. That's just about the only favourable thing I can say about Arriva at the moment, in terms of where they are. Because the Arriva have also removed the X21. And the X21 has generated more constituent casework than any other service. It's the connection that would get my people from the mining villages, there are the places like Trimdon, all of the Trimdons, there's several of them, Fishburn, Sedgefield, etc. So these are deprived communities. The communities with very, very low car ownership. And what have they done? They've removed the umbilical cord that gets them to Newton Aycliffe. Newton Aycliffe has an industrial estate with 10,000 jobs on it. You know, there's everything from your major organisations like your Hitachis, your Gestamps, your Husqvarnas, down to the myriad of small SMEs. These are the lifeline for these communities. You know, but the Trimdons and Fishburn are low density populated places with low job opportunities, and this commute, and to compound the issue, they're also places with incredibly low car ownership. In a survey of over 400 residents in the Trimdons, there are over 400 residents participated in, most complained that the lack of bus service severely restricted their lifestyle. 40% of residents, 40% have had to turn down employment or education opportunities because the transport connections did not exist to get them there. There's been stories posted in the local Facebook group about young people giving up jobs or turning them down due to these transport challenges. The Job Centre has said that transport challenges are the greatest difficulty in placing people into work. I'm really pleased that the recent grant that came into Durham can be used to buy infrastructure like new buses, bus stations, road improvements, but it can't be used to put revenue support behind an unprofitable route. And I really think we maybe need to look at something to help kick-start those situations, even if it's a short-term thing, just to pump prime routes in that sort of way. I just want to repeat something I said in another recent debate on the miners and mining communities about low connectivity. For me, social mobility can only come with physical mobility. If you can't get to the jobs, it's very, very difficult to improve yourself as to where it is. In Newton Aycliffe and Ned Park, we've got so many wonderful employment opportunities, but the bus services connecting those mining villages to them are just appalling. The single most crucial factor enabling the mining communities to thrive will be better transport, because, as I've just said, they have incredibly low levels of car ownership, and they're far too isolated for walking or cycling between the two. Therefore, the efforts to improve this is more critical than just about anything else that's going on in my part of the world. And it's not only the people trying to get jobs. Right here, right now, they're trying to get the DWP and try and sign it. They can't even get there to get to their appointments, to get the development, to get them to, etc., etc. I think you know where I'm going with that in terms of what this is all about. Now, there has been some attempts at improvement. Durham have got what they call a link. It's a dial-a-ride situation, but it's so specific. It's only like potentially getting people on to a 7 o'clock shift, and that's it. So I'm working currently with them at the moment, and we're hopeful that we'll get another proposal which will expand that and maybe make it so that we can get people to either a 9-to-5 job as opposed to just a shift pattern job, or maybe even with a bit of luck to try and get it so people can go shopping or can go to education facilities as well. So I'm hopeful that we're seeing some movement in that direction. I just want to digress a little bit and endorse what my friend from the other Stoke, I can't remember which one yours was from Stoke-on-Trent South, was saying about the importance of rail links as well. I have a Restoring Your Railways project that's ongoing that's been approved, which is at Forry Hill Station. That will have the opportunity to deliver economic growth into the station. It'll do all the things of really making these villages feel like we actually care, feel like people care about investing in them. It'll stimulate economic activity. But we need to get the buses connecting to the stations as well. Otherwise, it's going to be a long walk to the train if we don't deliver that. So, in conclusion, Ms. Vaz, what I would just like to say is to thank the Minister for his recent visits to the constituency, to talking to my people and residents in Fishburn, and understanding the need for what we do and encouraging our local providers and councils to deliver more. But anything further he can do to encourage their efforts will always be appreciated. Thank you.
Bob Seeley.
Thank you very much indeed. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. I'm here to thank the Minister. Before I do, I think on the island we're fortunate for many reasons, but one of them is that we still have, by rural standards, a very healthy set of bus routes. So even in my little hamlet, in the back of the Wight, in the West Wight, where we're served by the number 12 bus. I think, if memory serves me, we have 8 services out from Newport per working day and 7 going back in the other direction. And the last time I used the bus, and indeed our wonderful £2 bus fare, which I'm coming to shortly, was the week before last. We needed to get to Carisbrooke Castle for the wonderful Walk the Wight in aid of the Isle of Wight Hospice. I think being a minister is very often a thankless task, but it is so nice to have a minister that goes the extra mile, both for colleagues on this side of the House, but I very strongly suspect for members of Parliament on all sides of the House. And I want to thank him for helping us get the electric bus bid for the Isle of Wight over the line, because I know that we had to push quite hard to get it. And I'm delighted, following a few conversations with my honourable friend, should clearly be right honourable, my honourable friend, that we were able to get that over the line, and I'm hugely grateful that he was able to support the excellent bid that came from Southern Vectis and Richard Tilsley. And indeed, it's a great little company we have there, and our bus drivers on the island always seem to be incredibly friendly and a decent bunch, and it's always lovely to see them, and I want to thank them, frankly, for running such a friendly but also reliable service. Thanks to the funding that we're getting from the Minister, we've already started testing electric buses on the island, and we will soon have zero-emission buses covering Route 1 from Newport to Cowes, Route 5 from Newport to East Cowes, and Route 9 from Newport to Ryde. So that's going to mean lower emissions, clearly, and better air quality for island towns, Newport, Ryde, Cowes, East Cowes. He will also know, because, again, we've talked about it on quite a few occasions, that how popular the £2 bus fare is. Undoubtedly has got thousands of more people, and this comes from Southern Vectis, from Richard, has got thousands more people using the bus network on the Isle of Wight per month. It was going to be a temporary scheme. I know that I wasn't the only Member of Parliament lobbying the Minister, but many of us were lobbying the Minister, as I'm sure our excellent friend from Stoke-on-Trent North, and thank him for organising this great debate, and also Stoke-on-Trent South. I'm sure that they were likewise lobbying him. I am absolutely delighted that we've been able to extend that scheme because for me, especially for young people on the island, it is really important to help youngsters get around. The pensioners get the free buses, we know about that. But if you're on a minimum wage or if you're a young person starting out, you're on your first job, you don't have a lot of money, taxis on the island are really expensive, and actually to have a vibrant bus network that we do, but having a £2 max fare in one direction, £4 there and back, it makes a big difference.
So he's talking eloquently about the £2 bus fare, and I utterly endorse that. It is probably one of the most simple but absolutely persuasive ways of getting people back on the buses. But the most important thing for me, and certainly in my experience in my constituency, but up and down the country where it has been brought in, is that the impact it has on low income is just off the charts. And the ability in tough times, which clearly we've been living through for the last few years, the ability to get to work for a really understandable and a really appreciable figure that is by far discounted on what it was previously is genuinely the game changer.
I think the Minister of his intervention, and I think the last time I had a school visit through Parliament, some of the kids said, why should we vote Conservative? And I mean, I could talk about the amazing apprenticeship schemes. First thing that came to my head is a £2 bus fare. If you live in Wales, if you live in Labour-controlled London, they're going up. But if you're in Conservative areas, for the most part, you've got this fantastic scheme which helps young people get around. So in conclusion, I want to thank the Minister for finding the money to make sure that the Isle of Wight was included in his electric bus scheme. It's going to make a big difference, help drive down emissions, help improve air quality on the island, but also for the £2 bus fare, which has made such a difference and is getting people back on the buses, not least myself. Thank you.
So front benchers have 10 minutes. I call the opposition spokesperson, Bill Esterson.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Vaz. It's a pleasure to speak with you in the chair, and can I thank the honourable member from Stoke-on-Trent North for securing the debate. Thank also the other honourable members for their contributions. I think it's fair to say that the honourable member for Stoke-on-Trent North and I do not agree on much, but I have managed to identify some areas where we do. And firstly, I join him in paying tribute to bus drivers and other bus and public transport staff who, he quite rightly said, served through the pandemic. They've served before and after the pandemic too, but they did put their lives on the line, and some of them died. And I think it's an important reminder that he's made of just how just what an important role people in public transport have played and continue to play. We're also completely united in our agreement about the importance of buses in England. Millions depend on them. They are by far the most used form of public transport. And regardless of our policy disagreements, I know we can at least agree on the significance in both his constituency and mine. And I genuinely thank him for securing the debate today. Now, England's crumbling bus network is symptomatic of the scale of astonishing decline that this government has presided over. The statistics say it all. Deregulation of the bus network was in 1985. There were 1.5 billion fewer annual bus journeys in 2019 than there were in 1985. There have been 300 million fewer miles driven by buses per year since 2010, and thousands of bus services have been cut since 2010. In his speech, in his patch alone, the honourable member for Stoke-on-Trent North, bus miles have halved in the last decade, one of the highest falls in bus numbers in the country. He did indeed acknowledge that. And some parts of Stoke-on-Trent are barely served by buses at all anymore, and I welcome the better news that he and his honourable friend give about attempts to improve the service. This is a story, a very, very serious story across the country. In 2023, an outspoken local politician in Stoke-on-Trent said the state of the buses were damning on the poor performance of operators like First Bus, and that we need to let current operators know they've been put on notice. Well, those were the words of the honourable member himself. In fact, the honourable member has been an outspoken critic of his local bus operators on multiple occasions in the past, even going so far as to lecture ministers that First Bus continues to cut routes. It's time that First Bus does its bit. The experiences described by him demonstrate the reality of bus deregulation under the Conservatives, and they completely expose the failings of the government's sticking plaster approach to addressing the problems of a creaking bus network. I will do, actually.
If he's so critical, what would the Labour Party be doing about it?
Well, I think he's anticipating the second half of my speech, because that's what I'm going to come to. But before I do that, the honourable member from Stoke-on-Trent North's criticisms are a tacit admission that we need bold reform. I think this goes to the intervention, actually. But only Labour is going to be able to deliver this. Deregulation has not helped to compel First Bus to pull their finger out, despite the pleading by the honourable member for Stoke-on-Trent North. And instead, deregulation has robbed communities of a say over the vital bus services on which they depend. Micromanagement from Whitehall making it ridiculously complicated for local authorities to access the kind of funding streams that he and his honourable friend were alluding to. It simply hasn't achieved results. The current system has led to thousands of vital bus services being axed across the country. Bus services are a shadow of what they once were because unaccountable operators remain able to decide for themselves where services go and how they run. This government is presiding over shockingly bad bus services. We have a Prime Minister who prefers to travel by helicopter and private jet. He has no experience of the buses and trains that the rest of us use. So is it any wonder that public transport is in such a mess? So coming to Labour's plans for government, we know that a reliable, affordable, regular bus service is the difference between opportunity and isolation for millions of people. So Labour will give every community the power to take back control of their bus services and will support local leaders to deliver better buses and to do so faster. Labour's plans will create and save vital routes and services, end today's postcode lottery of bus services, and kickstart a revival of bus services across England. I'm happy to.
Could I just ask him to give a little bit more information as to precisely how he would achieve those objectives?
I'm quite enjoying these interventions because they're prompting the next stages of my speech to explain exactly what Labour's plans are for government. In our first term, should we be fortunate enough to serve, and I take nothing for granted, I am not complacent about this, but if we are elected, Labour will pass new legislation to support local transport authorities to take back control of their bus services. And we'll do it through a Better Buses Act, which will remove the costly, time-consuming barriers that currently restrict the ability of local transport authorities to control their bus services properly. Labour will reform funding structures, giving local leaders more flexibility over bus funding and allowing them to finally plan ahead for the long term, no more short-term cliff edges. And I think these approaches are going to address the difficulties that honourable members opposite identified in their speeches. Okay.
I'm just interested to see how this plays out in terms of consistency. Because we've got a new North-East mayor up in my part of the world who has just said that she's going to look at franchising. But yet when I sat in the Transport Committee last week, the union leaders that were in front of us were absolutely against franchising. So I just wondered if there was any consistency in the Labour approach.
Lesterson.
Well, there is the short answer, because we recognise the need for flexibility, we recognise the need for different options. And whilst we... No, I mean, honourable members are reacting to what I say, but whilst we see the need for bus franchising, I'll get there in a minute, the local franchising process being the presumed option, it isn't the only option that will be available with a Labour government. I'm going to finish the point rather than taking further interventions. At the moment, the limit is to metro mayors. So we're going to expand those powers to every local transport authority. We'll also accelerate the franchising process, cutting the process from the 2-year slog endured by Greater Manchester down to as little as 2 years. We'll introduce local network safeguards to provide more accountability over bus operators and ensure higher standards for operators wherever they are in England, whether they are under local franchising or not. And we're going to end the nonsensical ideological ban on new municipal bus companies, which this government introduced in 2017. Labour's plans could save up to 700 routes with local network safeguards designed to prevent profiteering at the expense of yet more devastating bus cuts. And our plans could create up to 600 new bus routes by expanding franchising powers, totalling an extra 250 million passenger journeys per year. I'm going to finish answering the previous two by going through our plans, if he doesn't mind. Thanks to our trailblazing Labour Metro mayors, we know how effective franchising can be. London under Sadiq Khan has one of the most sophisticated and best integrated transport networks in the world, and Andy Burnham's B network in Greater Manchester is already improving reliability and boosting ridership. It's something we want to emulate in the Liverpool City region, where I'm a mayor, and we're already adopting the approach of local franchising. After the fantastic election results we saw in the West Midlands, in North East England, in York and North Yorkshire and South Yorkshire, we have the opportunity for other areas to join the Liverpool City region and West Yorkshire as their combined authorities take the steps to pursue local franchising. Labour in regional government are taking bold steps to deliver for their communities, whilst the only remaining Conservative Metro mayor in the Tees Valley refuses to pursue franchising, even when the bus journey satisfaction in the Tees Valley is amongst the lowest anywhere in the country. Now, to the point about the options, franchising will not be appropriate for every local authority. So Labour's plans are specifically designed to be about empowering local authorities to use flexible funding and strengthened powers to make the decisions that affect their own backyard, not through diktat from Whitehall. And our approach will give local leaders the tools they need to improve their bus services, whether that's through new franchising models, setting up new publicly owned municipal bus companies, or significantly strengthened, enhanced partnerships. And that point is crucial. I think it does go to his question earlier, because there are notable pockets across England where enhanced partnerships between local authorities and operators have led to commendable levels of cooperation, excellence and improved performance. So where bus partnerships are working well, we will encourage them to continue. And Labour is unapologetically pragmatic, not dogmatic in our approach. We want to find the best solutions to the terrible state of our public transport system. So no one-size-fits-all approach, in stark contrast to the ideological obsession with deregulation and privatisation of the Conservatives. I'm coming to the end of my speech. The Conservatives have presided... Well, OK, I'll give way to him, but I think he probably...
Almost come to the end of your 10 minutes, so it's
well, I will do that choice. Rather than take an intervention. Then I'll thank you, Ms. Vaz. Well, I think the chair has indicated so. She's told me not. Can I seek your indulgence to take
carry on?
Right.
Jack Brereton.
The honourable member for giving way, but I am slightly perplexed by what we're hearing that is actually different to what the government is doing in terms of franchising. We've seen very few to no Labour authorities who've actually taken up these powers despite them existing, and actually in terms of those other authorities that are not mayoral areas, they can apply to Secretary of State for authority to do franchising if they so choose to. And we've heard just...
Sorry, can I just interrupt there, because we are coming up to a vote shortly and we haven't heard from the Minister yet.
I would like to know what it is that Labour would do differently.
I think I've got the question.
Bill Esterson.
Well, we're going to speed it up. We're going to make it a lot easier for people to do it. You know, it took over 6 years for Andy Burnham to get through the various hoops and bureaucracies put in his place. We've seen a similar problem in the Liverpool City region. We need to speed up the process. It's going to be the presumed option for any local authority that wants to use it. That is a fundamental shift, but again, not being dogmatic, being pragmatic. And Labour stands ready to empower local communities with the tools they need to take back control of their bus services. That is in stark contrast to 14 years of shocking decline in our bus network. What Labour will do, if we are in government, is usher in the most ambitious reform to England's bus network in 40 years. Thank you.
Minister Oppenheim.
Well, Mr Mayors, it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and frankly, you wait ages for a debate on bus services, and you do 2 in a day, and that is understandable and appropriate that for the second time today I rise to my feet in Westminster Hall to address the state of the nation in terms of our bus network. And I will briefly set out, before I probably get interrupted by a vote, some key thoughts. And I just really want to say that I endorse the comment by my honourable friend for Stoke-on-Trent South, is that obviously franchising exists already. Local authorities can do this already. And the key point that the honourable gentleman, the key point as he chunters away, having been laughed out of court earlier on, he chunters away. The key point about the Labour policy is they're very keen to propose franchising, but there is not a squidge of an iota about money. And the money that goes to the mayors for the franchising is the key difference. And what the Labour Party is proposing is a franchise policy without any fiscal assistance. And that will, in reality, will result in a way, way worse system. And if it was so broken, there was 13 years of a Labour government when they could have changed it, because quite frankly, when he gets into government, if he were ever so misfortunate that happened, he will realise that what he's proposing is genuinely not a good idea, without significant extra funding. And the funding, of course, because they will not commit to this, will not follow. So a local authority would struggle, frankly, to provide even the quality of the services that they are providing at the present stage. Anyway, enough of such claptrap. I move on. I congratulate my honourable friend for Stoke-on-Trent South for bringing this particular debate. It is... sorry, North. I'm so sorry. I got too excited. It is entirely right that he sets out that, as he rightly makes the point, that the COVID pandemic has had a massive impact, and that slowly but surely the funding situation and the take-up is improving. I look at base funding as a start point, which is, we have doubled bus funding in this country since 2010. We're in a situation that the degree of support is off the charts as compared to yesteryear. And we all accept there is a challenging environment that operators and local transport authorities have been working in over the last few years. But the key point surely is this: there is great collaborative work happening locally between local transport authorities, bus operators and passengers. The regulatory framework put in place by the 2017 Bus Services Act, and the largest public investment in bus services in all time, where we've announced over £4.5 billion worth of support to improve services since 2020. Over £2 billion of this funding has been allocated to every single local transport authority in England to help deliver their local bus service improvement plans. These help deliver more frequent, more reliable, easier to use and cheaper bus services. I want to just briefly talk about Stoke-on-Trent specifically. That clearly the funding has been used as an example of the kind of change that we're seeing. Stoke-on-Trent City Council has been allocated over £33 million from the DfT to deliver its bus service improvement plan, including an extra £1.4 million this year in funding redirected from HS2 through Network North. I'm pleased to see the result of that investment bearing fruit, with a number of bus service enhancements being introduced across Stoke-on-Trent. That provides better, more frequent services to help people get to and from work. And as outlined in my honourable friend's speech, I'm not going to go through all the various villages that have benefited and all the changes also that have taken place in the other parts of Stoke. But the good news does not stop there, because you've got the local affordable fares scheme, which is the £3.50 scheme, which is clearly something to be lauded, and the £2 single ticket, which is, again, subsidised and paid for by the taxpayer, arising out of the HS2 funding. Talk about today about funding, not a word said whether that would be continued under any Labour authority, any Labour government, because, of course, it is the key thing, as my honourable friend for Isle of Wight was expanding. It is the key thing to transform for low-income people, their ability to get to work and get about in whatever community. And it is such a transformational thing. And that £600 million, again, arises out of and is continued by the HS2 funding. And of course, I listened in great detail to all the speeches made, and I noticed that many colleagues were very keen to laud and be pleased about the zero-emission bus funding to what's called Zebra 2. And my honourable friend for Isle of Wight, who has campaigned and been, frankly, beating the path to my door on a repeat basis, managed to secure, as we are aware, the £4.5 million for the zero-emission buses for the Isle of Wight and Zebra 2. And self-evidently, my colleagues here were very keen to extol the £3.1 million Zebra funding for Staffordshire, albeit Stoke is not particularly effective. But I was surprised not to be told and lauded for the fact that Devon County Council have received £5.3 million of the zero-emission buses. And I was genuinely stunned and amazed that Liverpool City Council, which received the combined authority, which received £9.4 million, of which, the Honourable Gentleman is a Member of Parliament of, and no thanks or pleas that this government is funding to a massive degree zero-emission buses. And because, as always, the glass is half empty, and there is no laudable attempt to accept that in terms of things like zero-emission buses, there is a transformational difference that has been taking place. So we look at also the local transport fund, utterly key for places like Stoke, utterly key. And again, it is a decision by the PM in respect of HS2, the second leg. Again, this is a decision, I'm still unaware what the Labour position is on this. As always, no word on funding whatsoever. But that is £4.7 million of extra funding, of which Stoke-on-Trent benefits to the tune of £134 million. I want to address some of the key points in relation to Stoke in terms of the specific issue made in respect of the cap, because I entirely agree with the Prime Minister. I'm afraid I do not agree with the local authority leader. It is entirely something that can be addressed by reason of local authority funding, and there are, as I'm setting out in detail, there is a plethora of extra local authority funding which could be used in this particular way. So, the Honourable Gentleman talked about cuts in 2010. He doesn't seem to remember Gordon Brown selling the goal, bankrupting the economy, and a note written by a Labour MP, a note which very famously says, "I'm sorry, there is no more money." I'm sorry, there is no more money. The Honourable Gentleman has a brass neck to come to this House and in any way start saying that 2010 was anything other than a disastrous Labour government who were rightly voted out. So, we move back to Stoke, if I may. The Honourable Gentleman will be aware that the local transport fund is, again, transformational, £134 million. This can also be used on buses. It can be used to improve bus routes. It can also be the situation that it builds on the substantial investment this government has put into local transport through the Transforming Cities Fund, where Stoke again has been awarded £34.6 million as one of the many beneficiaries. And I've touched on twice the point in terms of concessionary travel. I regret to say I manifestly disagree with the local authority leader, and I sincerely hope he has the guts to reply after over 100 days to my honourable friend's letter. The reality going forward is that I've touched on the discretionary, I'm conscious of time on the incoming vote, I've touched on the discretionary fares, I've touched on other key points. It is outstandingly the case that the zero-emission buses will make a huge difference to the areas that they have got. I welcome what has taken place in respect of the Isle of Wight and the other local authorities I've set out. And as he rightly says, it's not just to Conservative-run areas or Conservative MPs, it is across the country. In terms of cash that was raised, we are aware of the importance of that and would encourage private operators to ensure alternative payments do continue on an ongoing basis. And in terms of the point in relation to Sedgefield and my honourable friend making those particular points, it was a pleasure to go to the Fishburn Youth and Community Centre, where I enjoyed a delicious pancake on Pancake Tuesday. And clearly, there is some positive news in terms of what Arriva are doing in relation to the X12, but I continue to want to see better work between Durham County Council and the individual provider. And in terms of the other key points, I just would finish by saying this. Clearly, this has been a difficult time with the COVID pandemic, with the war in Ukraine, but it is absolutely the case that we believe that Stoke is doing better and that bus services, with the record funding that are going in, have genuinely a better future lies ahead.
Minister. Jonathan Gullis to wind up.
Thank you, Mr. I want to thank all honourable members for taking part in today's debate and for both the Minister and Shadow Minister's response to it. And I just want to extol once again the fact that Stoke-on-Trent has had around £30+ million to improve our local bus service, around £30+ million for the Transforming Cities Fund. We're getting now an extra over 100 million additional through the improving our transport funding. We're getting an extra 200+ million across Stoke-on-Trent and Staffordshire to fix our broken roads and pavements, on top of obviously what was done by the last Conservative-led administration at Stoke-on-Trent City Council that did a record £39 million into fixing over 30,000 potholes and resurfacing over 1,200 roads and pavements. And of course, the bus service improvement plan, specifically the £3.50 a day flat fare. An awful lot of work has gone. But just to finish, Ms Vaz, I want to thank the Shadow Minister for his kind words and where we did indeed share commonality in terms of our views. And he is absolutely right. I did indeed say that Potteries First were on notice to Golden Hill Community Centre because ultimately I was sick to the back teeth and time again seeing services cut even after ministers had arrived to hear about our bus service improvement funding and leading to more and more people feeling despondent despite having secured that funding. And I'm delighted to say that now we're seeing the new services coming in, we're therefore seeing the improvements, we're seeing that the independent surveys are saying Stoke is second best in the country for value money and fourth for passenger satisfaction. So first are still on notice, I gave them to the end of 2024, but with the direction of travel is heading in the right direction. And the fact that the Honourable Member was so kind to point out that I have not always been to the whip's annoyance, a party boy, and willing to say what I think and be outspoken and to push the letter envelope more than I should do, that ultimately he's made it clear to the voters of Stoke-on-Trent North Kidsgrove Talk that if they want a true community champion, someone who will stand up for their beliefs and their values, someone who is not willing to just always take the party line and to therefore be independent of thought, unlike many opposition opponents that I'll be facing in the general election, then they should vote for Jonathan Gullis and vote Conservative in the next general election.
The question is that this House has considered bus services in England. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order. Order, order. The sitting is suspended until 4 o'clock.